Hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we are going to go through the CEO Executive series that you can look forward to staying in tune with for the upcoming season. We have now transitioned from winter into spring, and therefore content will be geared in that direction to move forward. Stick around if you would like to read with me from one of my blogs that I've written and posted on my website, www.mygreenbalance.com. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you now, and we will go through this together. Okay. What you'll find when you go to the blogs on the website look like this a lot, where you can see you just go to about, then you'll see blog, and then you'll see some pieces to read from. I prefer reading to you to allow you to relax your mind a little bit and to take in the information while reading, because I'll also share my screen with you. Okay, so this is the CEO Executive Series. The CEO operating system. There are many positions within an organization, and everyone has their assigned roles for specific reasons. And this could be due to a skill set either built from scratch, developed, or different delegating based on your academic certifications, etc. And within an organization, the CEO, the Chief Execution Officer, is there. Then there is CFO, financial control. There is marketing departments. There are personal assistant roles. There's HR. There's admin staff. There are operations, COO. There are different roles within organizations and then different levels of employees and status, right? So it's the board group, and then you have like the chairmans and different executives in the executive series. Today we're focusing specifically on the CEO. Many of the CEOs that we have interviewed have a specific skill set developed over time where their skills range a lot from being able to strategize strategically while also seeing some data trends, directing, delegating skills, and let's go even deeper into the elite routines to allow us to see clearly the cognitive precision aligned with executive wellness. If some of your goals are to be able to advance into a CEO level, this might be interesting for you to study. When I started this brand in 2014, I naturally was called to buy a lot of business books early on and to understand the organizational structures within organizations. Lo and behold, I went into further learning in psychology and organizational psychology to understand operations within an organization and management. Management is also a different level within an organization. Okay, so this is not normal morning routine fluff that you'll hear about interviewing CEOs, etc., etc. This is a performance architecture framework for founders, executives, wealth builders, and high capacity women building empires without burnout. Okay, so touching on this lightly, the CEO identity shift. Usually there's an identity you want to see when you look in the mirror, and it's important to have your own identity that you feel you are within your core relative to an organization, relative to your family, relative to anything else. You always want to have that security within yourself. And Then after that framework is developed or that identity is developed, can you begin to understand how everything else synchronizes around you, for example, for delegation purposes, at bare minimum, okay? You don't need motivation, you need identity engineering, especially if you're growing an organization. Identity is important to anchor to yourself before you build habits because you want that identity to be unshakable within yourself as anything changes around you. And then you can negotiate and develop, well, what habits do I want to keep as my identity? What habits am I aligned with? And what habits are not aligned with this? And that ties more into values as well. Neural reinforcement and executive self-concept. These are further notes within the same theme. Having standards and understanding the difference between a standard and a goal. Because what we notice with having standards is that, like Brendan Burchard recommends, in health and wellness, we must raise our standards, whether that is what our base standards are for what we have for breakfast, lunch, dinner, what we dress as a dress code within an organization. There's some things you don't skimp on, and you don't have to explain yourself because standards are standards and they're pretty self-explanatory. Whereas a goal is more of something you're reaching towards, whether it's a one-on-one goal, a private goal, a group goal. It's more of a community or team building space to build strategy, to build momentum into achieving something. And that is the difference between standards and goals. When you design your internal operating system, you can decide, well, if you're under 25, your prefrontal cortex has not yet been fully developed. So you can design your internal operating system as such. However, because we do have research on neuroplasticity and neuroscience, we are noticing that the same way you go to work out biceps in the gym, you can build neuroplasticity and work on your internal operating system through cognitive design or redesign as you grow even past 25 years old. It does take like over 10,000 hours of studying, research, and cognitive development practices, theories, applying them for that consistent movement. So I'm not saying it's an easy, straightforward thing. I'm saying it's possible. It does take a lot of work. And if you're ready to do that work, then everything is at your fingertips, right? Wellness alignment, nervous system regulation is very important with that. Emotional mastery as leadership currency. Mastering emotions is possibly one of the most challenging human skills. And the better you get at it, the more of an edge you will have. Again, this might take a good 10,000 hours of development practice and cognitive behavioral therapy. However, it's all very possible. Self-mastery would be the byproduct of several compartments of 10,000 hours in skill building for a compounded finished product. And that does give you executive power, okay? The 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. executive power block. This is one of the most frequent commentary ideas that I hear from executives, and each human is different. However, most of the executives I meet who have families do say that 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. block is gold when it comes to starting the day. and how it's done in a specific sequence or order. So they have a wake-up protocol, hydration, mineral balance, light exposure, 20-minute movement, yoga, resistance, walking, strategic journaling, clarity questions, deep work block where there are no notifications, wellness integration, cortisol rhythm optimization, blood sugar stability, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF activation. Executive nutrition for cognitive dominance. Eat like a leader, not like a reactor. Many people, many humans are consuming extra sweets and chocolates from a very reactive position. And I've noticed this with the psychology of eating and eating behavior is that many times when people are overeating or eating on impulse with junk food and extra sweets, it's more of a reaction, a trigger, an emotional byproduct. This fits beautifully if you master it well with having an anti-inflammatory structured wellness background, to have more of a routine ingredient list and shopping list to allow for consistency and healthy leadership versus like reacting impulsively. Glucose stability for decision making. When people say try not to make decisions on an empty stomach, this is probably why, because when our glucose is low or we haven't eaten, it does give us skewed decision making skills. Like if you go to the grocery store on an empty stomach versus if you've eaten, you'll make different choices. Similarly with that. Protein forward breakfasts. When we start the day with fiber and protein, we are likely to feel fuller for a longer amount of time. If you do have toast or breads for breakfast, which is high carb, you may want to have a gluten-free toast or oatmeal, which is higher and richer in fiber. And white gluten-free toast is not the end of the world because it's made with ingredients like potato or cassava flour versus other wheat flour that are pro-inflammatory. Anti-inflammatory executive plates might start with a gorgeous fruit platter, fresh, local from the tropics, whether you're in Barbados or you're in St. Lucia or you're in St. Martin or you're in a different island. You can look at what fruits are seasonal and focus on those. Cold fruit in the morning is usually some of the best of the best of the best. For starting the day, knowing that you're putting antioxidants into your system, it's cold, hydrating, refreshing, and then you have something protein rich and some healthy fibers. Intermittent fasting is strategic, it's not trendy, and they're travel-proof nutrition strategies that you can learn to implement today. And once you learn them, you'll be able to apply them regularly. Brand alignment, having balanced plates with protein, vegetables, whole carbs, and fats really do complete a full plate of food, and practicing portions is really important, especially if you're wanting to avoid obesity, cholesterol, diabetes, high blood pressure, and other risks. Collagen smoothies are some of my favorite for anti-aging principles. Executive clarity meals, sipping on some green tea. Caffeine is one of those ingredients that does help with focus. So that you've had a substantial meal and then a coffee You water first, and then you just go in, be extremely productive, do what you gotta do until your next meal. Reducing friction increases power. Decision fatigue, uniform strategy helps a lot. I like that perspective, like Steve Jobs before he died from cancer, which is so sad. I listened to some of his documentary stuff and I felt super aligned with it because having a uniform or capsule wardrobe really helps for not falling into decision fatigue because it's straightforward, like white t-shirt, white t-shirt, white t-shirt, white t-shirt, white t-shirt, white t-shirt, white t-shirt. Like it's a straightforward everyday outfit that you don't have to think about, well, what should I wear? What should I not wear? What should I wear? What should I not wear? Uh, and so forth. Different brands, different styles, but a simple wardrobe really does help if you have an executive mindset where you want repetition and results and you don't want to fuss about frivolous stuff in between. Time blocking is important. Delegating and having a delegation matrix to think, okay, well, as an executive, I can handle this. However, there are other tasks that I can delegate to staff accordingly, that I can, put in the staff pile to do, but the executive level works on a different level, and there's just some tasks that only an executive mind can tackle, and the rest is for just staff that have different skill sets that can work with those. When it comes to cognitive bandwidth and conservation, the nervous system is important to consider how to preserve it for consistency and for managing an organization or a group or many clients. Movement as a competitive advantage. Your body is a boardroom and moving helps. So resistance training, minimum 3 days a week, moves stress, it builds resilience, it builds endurance, it keeps you lean. You can have walking meetings. That's my favorite, walking meetings, whether outdoors or in the gym, because if you have decided I'm gonna be lean for life, then if you want to live into your 90s, hundreds with your health together and your body avoiding being put into nursing homes, and you have the staff and nurses to care for the environment, then you can focus on staying active, flexible, and focusing on longevity. Yoga for executive resilience is good if you get injuries and you need to keep flexible alongside even your fitness routines. Mobility as longevity insurance is a really healthy concept to consider. Ashtanga principles. So this type of yoga is good because it's a faster pace of a type of yoga. So it's like a yoga workout, but you can decide how you want to do your activity in what regard. Executive emotional regulation. A calm CEO always wins. So staying calm, avoiding emotional triggers, scheduling when to tackle difficult emotions, tasks, personalities, psychologies, whatnot, really helps. For example, if there are certain topics to deal with after lunch when you're in a different state of mind, you have to schedule that accordingly versus tasks that you can handle and manage before lunch for best performance. And as you set that calendar, you retain healthy boundaries that you can then have to align with staying calm and leading consistently and sustainably. Right? So you can do further research into some of these topics that are accessory topics like stress transmutation, heart rate variability, response versus reaction, emotional neutrality in negotiations, wellness integration, breath protocols, cold exposure, evening parasympathetic rituals. The CEO energy audit. Audit your energy like you audit your finances. And I am a firm believer on this because it's very important to check in to understand when you need to recharge, when you need to communicate, hi, I can deal with this and this time, this time, this time, versus being overwhelmed when demands come in and creating a chaotic, reactive scheduling experience to deal with things that may throw your energy off versus, okay, all the stuff comes on a list and then I prioritize what's most important to deal with when based on, okay, well, I have energy at this time, I'll focus on it now. Or I don't have energy or I have energy. And that is how the delegation tasks also help with that. It's important to be mindful of energy leaks and if there are people who drain your energy or if there's some environments that have leaks in draining from you in different regards. You want to be able to keep and preserve that energy and ground it accordingly into yourself, into your tasks, into your protocols, your projects, so that all energy is strategically directed in the right spaces and not gone in any random directions that are not called for. Meetings also. There are relationship standards that you have that are non-negotiable within yourself. For example, if your professional relations only wants to deal with a certain net worth, you don't need to explain that to anybody because that's your standard. Digital boundaries, when it comes to digital boundaries with yourself, with your family, that's very personal. And each human is entitled to set that for themselves where the digital boundaries are. And especially when it comes to energy, who gets access and who doesn't, because that is a strict protocol that is important. People have correct respect for it's like having security and bodyguards and gated security systems at your houses, your neighborhoods. You don't get past the security because that's a boundary. And similarly in the digital space. And that's very important for people to be aware. That's why bodyguards carry guns for safety. You know, we don't have that in the digital world, but it's very important that people have that level of respect and understanding that, you know, if you send an email to someone and they say, don't email me, you don't email them. Or if you send a request and someone accepts, then that's a clear sign of yes. Or if you message someone and they respond, that's clear reciprocal communication. If someone is not responding and then still believes they have access to you, like that doesn't flow. Okay. So there are clear digital boundaries. If you don't understand, do further research so that everybody can be clear as to where they stand, especially in 2026. All right. Pre-2026, everything should have been dealt with and I's dotted, T's crossed that there should be nothing to really move forward into 2026 randomly. Everything should have been laid out on the table so that there's no confusion moving forward in 2026. if you have comprehension problems or if you cannot read properly or understand legal and law, and if you cannot understand what no means and how these communications come forward, you can speak to different lawyers and have different bodyguards figure your process out. But in 2026, digital boundaries are essential that everyone be aware of and have a good understanding of how to follow clear boundaries and what no means. Okay? Having high performance friendships, some of my favorites, because I love being around high performers because we can always grow together and it's a more pleasant environment of we already have our standards and our boundaries, and anything that does not align, it's easy for us to get rid of it. And for us to understand that we get to support each other in whatever we want to do that's allowed in this world. And we celebrate each other's wins and support each other's businesses. And that's always the best. And especially, it's really good for health. This connects to previous themes about social circles and alignment. You really want to make sure that when you have your circle, it's a no-brainer that that's your crew and there's no extras or tag-alongs or fans that have unwarranted access. And therefore, there are clear boundaries defined. Wealth, longevity, and legacy thinking. Build a body that outlives the business. We love this because topics such as health span versus lifespan exist. Cognitive longevity, strategic rest cycles, executive sabbaticals, all for it. This is very on an executive level of how companies that are at the top stay at the top and how they are able to maintain competitive advantages year after year after year. And with health being at the center of this, because you need to have a healthy body and mind in order to consistently bring that level of results year after year after year. Right? So holistic wealth, financial, physical, and relational are all very important. The CEO weekly reset system is something we do like to consider. Sunday is for strategy, structure, financial review, calendar, design, redesign, fitness scheduling, family time blocking, meal prep planning. These are all components that we fit perfectly into our calendar to allow for specific results. This reinforces your structured but intuitive wellness philosophy. The 10-year CEO blueprint. Operate like the person you intend to become. It's very normal as a teenager in school, if you're lucky enough to have gone to a lovely private school and you see yourself doing your SATs and passing and studying and acing all of your exams, and you see yourself as a normal person just getting through high school, getting good grades, going to the gym, and you don't see yourself as a CEO or a business owner or the top executive of your company in 10 years, married with kids, you may not see that then. However, it's important now, wherever you are, you see yourself in the next decade based on what you've seen in the past decade to allow yourself a level to grow up into in a way that when you're in your 40s, you're like, wow, I set a goal to be at this level and I did it very well. Long-term horizon thinking is a skill here, global positioning, family legacy planning, executive partnership standards, succession and heirs. And this integrates further on work models, wellness as a wealth multiplier, and international exposure and legacy building. All right, so just as a quick sign off before I go, this is an example of what some of the CEO daily schedules look like. As an example, if it's something you want to aspire to in creating a calendar for the next 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months, even if you like that kind of consistency, it can take you all the way till the end of the year. And to have quarterly check-ins where you see 5:30 a.m., you wake up, you have a light hydration, walk around in nature, and then my battery. You can then check with some movement, some light movement, some yoga, strength. You can have a protein breakfast and collagen smoothie. Look at this camera. I just got my new Zoom membership and it's not giving me the frame that I want with my paid subscription. So that's that. Okay, protein breakfast, strategic journaling, deep work, 7:30 a.m., 10:30 walking cold. 12, yeah, I like the walking calls a lot because you can be on the phone checking emails. I'm gonna say this time and time again. If you don't have those walking mats in your office now and you don't have your treadmill desk set up, you are behind. You should be taking calls and doing emails while you're on your treadmill or on a bike, a stationary bike. And I believe that 100% since like 5 years ago. So I'm just gonna reiterate that. 1 o'clock meetings, creative block, 6 p.m. strength or mobility. Usually family time is going on here. You'll notice a lot of married executives. I have quite a few in my family. It's family time around this time. So out with the kids, whether it's in a park with the kids. So maybe more mobility at this time. You might not find that you get gym time in this time if you're a family person, okay? And then 7:30 p.m., which is dinner. If you do want to do exercises, then you might get more of a chance to do that, but it's usually wind down time with the family still. So that's usually a negotiable time that people have to negotiate on. And then especially weekends with regard to fishing or golf and parenting and fitness and leaving the house, organizing with house stuff. So those are all negotiable stuff that as a CEO, you need to learn because you need to know how to delegate and strategically plan and organize your time to allow for a fully functioning environment. And also happy wife, happy life, right? Okay. So 9:30 digital shutdown. Usually you want to be in bed by 9, reading, connecting with your spouse, etc., etc. And then by 10, you're asleep. That's usually a pretty normal executive day. And I recommend this structure for parents who naturally wake up a lot earlier than non-parents, because you have to. And this sort of positioning is healthy and balanced. So people say, well, there's no work-life balance. And I agree because, again, balance is for the top 0.0001%. It's what you aim or aspire towards after you've reached a certain net worth or level of wealth. So if you're just a millionaire or you're less than a millionaire, don't try to think about balance. You're going to be a hustler forever. You're not going to reach that level of balance because it is designed strategically to be out of your price range. And that was decided years ago. So when you go and look online, what is this balance? If you're an aspiring entrepreneur, CEO, you're not going to see balance, especially if you're going to get married with kids until you're probably in your 50s plus, because that's just how it is. Okay. So that is important that you have an environment, team, or family that really understands when you are locked in and focused on your career, that there's not much time for balance unless you use this strategy where you have your treadmill at your desk or stationary bike at the office doing emails and calls. That's the only thing I can see working for you. And then when it comes to your diet mastery journey, that is another skill set to aspire towards mastering, especially for a family. If you're feeding kids and you are focusing on a very clean, niche diet that I wouldn't say healthy food is the most expensive. However, there is a certain way of eating that might be a little more expensive if you do decide to have a large spend allocated to ingredients that some families allocate for, especially when it comes to anti-aging and beauty supplements and having that direction. It can work for lower budgets, but that's a different type of diet to what CEOs prefer. And when it comes to yoga, yoga is a discipline and it does build a discipline with the CEO as well. I have worked with some marathon runners who do marathons to train their minds to be able to go further mentally within their organizations. And so you can do yoga similarly because it's so much breath work that you end up having to hold these positions that are sometimes quite stressful as your body and your muscles shake and you're stuck there. You can't get out of these positions because you're challenging yourself. And you have to breathe through it, which builds that flexibility, the resilience, all of those supporting muscles around your joints. And you'll notice that the more you develop that skill set, I'm thinking of, is this called Taekwondo, where they do this kind of, no, it's not martial arts, it's Tai Chi, right? So it's Tai Chi style where you can also make sure that what you learn on the mat, when it's time to be in the real world, in a work office environment, having a meeting to close a deal or get business or sign new business or whatnot, when your mindset is profits, 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 and getting those financial goals met, you're able to apply that skill set you learn on the mat into that real life situation. Similarly, if you're stuck in traffic, it can be that you're stuck in traffic and you're pissed off and you're yelling and acting like a complete lunatic, raising your voice, being completely annoying tones of voice, loud, obnoxious, or you can shush, zip it, pipe down, calm yourself, put your ego on a leash, sit back, breathe, drive your car, and mind your own business. That also is a solution. Okay? And finally, when it comes to your executive ambition, there will always have to be a decision you make within yourself that you have goals, but not at the expense of whatever's important to you for your, like your family, for example. So go and be as ambitious as you want. But if it comes at the expense of losing a bunch of your family, you're not going to want that. So you have to be aligned with how much ambition you're thinking. If you're lucky enough to be a single bachelor, bachelorette entrepreneur, you don't have much to lose or people to consider when being ambitious. So you can be as ambitious as you want until you have someone else to consider or a significant other or kids or family, then you may not want to be as ambitious because that could come at risk of people where you're willing to sacrifice any or everything to get to a certain level of success. However, if you're lucky enough to not have any of that baggage, you kind of could go as hardcore as you need to or want to reach whatever levels of success you want. If you find someone to match that eventually on that route or journey, that's more exciting for sure. And until then, the world is basically yours to succeed in, and your pace will be 10 times faster than the average human mind can facilitate or understand, because most people who are average already have demands within their family dynamics where they cannot sacrifice what an independent bachelor or bachelorette can sacrifice in terms of speed, direction for ambition. Okay, so it's always going to be a fine line where you're going to have to really check in with your value system and your identity. Again, you want to stay anchored with your identity because you can't pretend to be someone else, and you can't want what someone else has because you never know what you might have to sacrifice to even get an inch further than where you are now. Whereas an independent person who does not have all that baggage can make a bunch of sacrifices because they don't answer to anyone. And they can fly and do whatever because they don't have people holding on to their back or having to consider other people's feelings because there's nobody that accept them and their goals and ambitions. Similarly to elite athletes, other independent business owners, etc., etc. Right? And when it comes to global and legacy thinking, this is an extra. It's like icing on a cake, because if you really are that ambitious or you want your children to be that ambitious, it's still a rare concept to want those things unless you came from a really hard background or you just decided one day you wanted to be mega successful, or your family's passing these traits down to you to have a legacy mindset. It's not really necessary for the average person. Like, I wouldn't recommend it to the average person. I really wouldn't, because when you know what it will take to acquire the discipline to even give yourself your first skill set of your 10,000 hours that you have to prioritize in order to build a skill in the first place. And if you want to build like 10 of those skills, that's 100,000 hours. You'd have to seriously look at your lifetime for your future. And you would have to find 100,000 hours of independent study and practical time to acquire what you might think you might want. So you always want to weigh in and check, is this really going to be worth it to me to try to go there or do that or be like this person or whatnot, or to do something like how this other person did it? Or you can stay in your lane, and legends and legacy builders and legacy families already have this level of discipline that they consider non-negotiable when it comes to how to live a life. And you'll notice quite a few CEOs are that obsessed that the level of sacrifices made have been extreme to the average person, but that's why they're not average, right? That's why they're CEO, okay? And that is how we're gonna wrap up today. I really hope that you loved this chat for the introduction of the CEO Executive Series. I really enjoy having you here and chatting. And it's exciting having you in my virtual office. You can also book in if you would like to step into my active virtual office or meet me in person. And until next time, for our next episode, remember to like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you